Welcome to Fly on the Wall podcast. I'm your host, Chris Sonksen, CEO and founder of Church Boom. Here you get to sit in on a live coaching session as I coach pastors through the ministry challenges we all face. If you find this podcast helpful, please make sure to like, subscribe, and share. Hey everyone, welcome to our podcast today. We are talking with Chad and Amber from Texas. We're talking about a great subject I love, about leading with confidence. One thing I always teach is that if you don't lead with confidence, your team will lack commitment. And we're talking about that with Chad and Amber. But before we jump into that, I want to tell you to check out churchboom.org and go to the Church Boom University section in churchboom.org. Church Boom University is something you can belong to where you get master classes, you have resources sent to you every quarter. You can learn about church leadership development, church growth, generosity, how to create a generosity calendar, just an ongoing leadership development platform designed just for you. So check out Church Boom University. You will absolutely love it. But hey, let's jump into that conversation today with my good friends, Chad and Amber. Let's check it out. Great to have you guys on the call, man. How can I serve you today? What do you guys want to talk about?
Yeah, well, we had a couple questions we were thinking about, and so I guess I'll just start with the first one. Something that we have experienced, and I've talked to some other pastor friends of mine, they're kind of experiencing it as well with the patterns of how church attendance goes. In the last year or two, we've really seen where our big days are as big or bigger than ever, but our off days are more off than ever as well. So, I mean, for instance, Easter was our biggest ever Easter that we've had. Mother's Day was right there close. I think one of the biggest Mother's Day we've ever had. Christmas was similar. But then on just the off days, it seems to be lower than it normally is as well. And so my question was just like, is that something that you're seeing and experiencing? And also, like, are there some ways we can kind of offset that? Some ways we can set our expectations for that as well? Let us know what you've been seeing on that, Pastor Chris.
Oh, yeah. Well, no, you're right. It is the fluctuation of people's church attendance is getting worse. Pre-pandemic, it was the average person was attending church 1.7 times a month. Now, I haven't seen the latest stats, but I got to believe it's lower than 1.7. So let's say it's 1.3, 1.4. That's less than 2 times a month the average person's attending. And so that number, it doesn't mean that the base gets smaller. It just means that the frequency of their attendance gets less. And I don't think that's healthy. I don't think it's right. Obviously, we don't think it's right or healthy. So how do we fix that? And the one thing that I always talk about is you have to get strategic on how you are going to adjust people's frequency of their church attendance. Can you get it from, well, let's just call it 1.7, whatever. But can you get it from 1.7 to 2.7? Can you take the person that comes once every 6 weeks to come once every 4 to come once every 2? Mm-hmm. 2 things happen. One, I think there's a discipleship thing that happens. Secondly, what happens is there is the growth and the habit that starts happening and the momentum that starts taking place. One of the things that we talk about, and I think maybe we've talked about this before, but one of the things that I love talking about is how do we target what I call 1-3 or 2-4? So the first and third of the month or the second and fourth of the month. Mm-hmm. Is there a way that we could increase people's frequency? So what could we emphasize on that first Sunday of the month for the adults? And then what could we emphasize for children as a way to get to the adults in that third week of the month, where you do something really special for the kids and you do, Splash Sunday, Reptile Sunday, whatever it is, you do something really awesome for the kids. You actually send mailers out, which kids never get mail. You send mailers out, you do all this stuff to target those kids to say, man, I want to be their mom, I want to be their dad. Because if an 8-year-old gets a piece of mail, parents are coming to church on Sunday, whether they like it or not. And so, for instance, a church where we were working with Arizona was experiencing the same thing. And so we started the 1-3 with them about, 9-10 months ago. And I think their overall attendance is increasing, but they're watching the frequency increase, because they can see it. So all of a sudden, that person that only comes 1.7 is starting to come a little bit more, but doesn't even realize they're coming more because their habits just started to change. You have to start changing people's habits. That's what's got to happen. It can't just be preach about it. You need the church. You need to be in church, the temple of God, the family of God, Sabbath and all that, though that's important. We've got to strategically change people's frequency, because once they get in the habit of 2.7, they'll just be in the habit of 2.7.
Yeah.
And that's how they target it. They've done extraordinarily well with children's department, and that's really helped a lot. Targeting the children on that week. So I don't know if that helps or if you have any feedback on that, but that's that's
definitely very helpful.
Yeah.
And then just as the leader and as the pastor, even as the team, as the staff, like, how do we manage our own expectations on that as well?
Yeah. Well, I think that one thing is why I think it's so important, especially with the staff. One thing I've learned is that if the leader doesn't have confidence, the team doesn't have commitment. And when the confidence is, look, this is what's happening, we are going to correct it. We're not going to talk every Sunday. That was high. That was low. What's going on? That's the problem in America. A lot of churches are experiencing it. That doesn't fix anything. Yeah. Maybe it makes us feel better, because misery loves company. But it doesn't fix anything. I mean, to sit around in a staff meeting going, this is horrible. It's not like it used to be. Yeah. And I was talking to my friend over in wherever, and he said this. And it's the same thing we're experiencing. That doesn't fix anything.
Right.
But to walk in as a leader and say with confidence, look, we can fix this. We can fix this. A lot of leaders don't do that, because I think that we gravitate to, we always try to put a positive spin on negative data. So we have a tendency to kind of find that thing that's not going right. Then we find 4 or 5 other people that are experiencing it too. And then we just sort of complain about it, every other week in staff. And I don't think soldiers follow discouraged generals. I think that you have to walk in and just say, look, this is where it's at. This is where we want to get. This is how we're going to do it. Yeah. And let's execute this plan and move forward. This is what we're going to do. There's got to be that level of confidence, because like I said, if a leader lacks confidence, the team lacks commitment. And you have to have that sense of like, man, this is what we're going to do. And I think that's how it's not managing, Chad. I don't think it's managing expectations as much as setting them high and saying, we can fix this. Right. Yeah. Because there are a lot of churches that are experiencing that. And there's a lot of churches that we're coaching right now we have a church that we've been coaching that's, man, in the last 16, 17 months, they've gone from 2 to, they're running a solid 3,500 now. I mean, that's a 1,500 people increase. We got a lot of churches that are continuing to see it. But I believe that we as leaders have to operate in a level of confidence. People will pick up half your passion but twice your hesitation. So you have to come in saying, this is where we're going to be. This is where we're going. This is a problem. Yeah. It's not a problem for everybody in America, but it is a problem for a lot of churches. And that's true. I will say that. But it doesn't mean it has to be a problem for us. Right. Let's fix it.
Right. That's good.
I think you have to change your thinking, walk in and just say, this is what we're going to do, and then fix it.
Yeah.
And,
I like that. So good. Yeah, thank you.
Very good.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay,
what else you got?
What advice would you give to husbands and wives who work on the same team and who work together daily?
Yes. Yeah. Give the wife a raise. That's what I would say.
Yeah.
See, I do what I can. I'm a giver. I'm trying to help.
But just for context, I mean, we work together, kind of co-pastors. Her role is the executive pastor. My role is the lead pastor, but we're really co-pastors. And so I'm sure there are people that are listening to the podcast that have similar scenarios, or other family members or whatever. So talk to us about that.
Yeah, no, I 100% correct. And was talking with, just probably, 2-3 months ago, talking with another couple on the East Coast that kind of have that similar co-pastoring concept there, and which I think is great. If it's wired for both of them, I don't think it has to be that way. I don't think it's wrong to be that way, but sometimes the wife is like, look, I don't have, that is not me. And that's fine too. Yeah. But in this situation, Amber is an amazing leader and a strong leader. So the things that, when I was talking to both of them, we were sitting there in their office, and I just said, okay, number one, in your marriage, and you know this, I'm not going to tell you anything you don't know, but for people that are listening, we have to know the spiritual role at home and at work.
Yeah.
And I think in this situation, the people on the East Coast, I think that they were taking what they were doing at work and bringing it home. And not just the work home, the spirit and the spirit and that sort of dual authority, they were bringing it into the home. And and it was tough because I don't want to sound like a male chauvinist maniac, but I did tell the lady with the husband there, I said, you need to let him spiritually lead at home. Yeah. He has to be, you got to let him lead. Because it was becoming a tension point. And I was saying, look, if it's an tension point, you're going to have to fix this because your marriage is more important and you got to make sure that, So one is, I think, monitoring that at home. Two is, I think, dual respect and honor, that the staff see that. The third component that I would say is really tough to navigate, and I think it's more about awareness, is, let's say in a situation, Bob and Sue, they're both lead pastors or co-pastors, but in true reality, Bob's more the communicator. Sue is sort of this, executive type leader, whatever the case is. And I'm thinking of one situation right now that the church runs a couple thousand, and they've got 2 or 3 executive pastors. One of them happens to be the wife. So, but they co-pastors, they call themselves co-pastors. She sort of serves in this executive role with a couple other executive pastors, and he serves in this sort of speaking role, if you will, but they're co-pastors. What they were not realizing, this was, several months ago, but what they were not realizing was, you have a staff that is afraid to be honest, because you've got 2 major leaders in this church that are married. And if they can be really honest about Joe, the other executive pastor, but they can't be honest about your wife. And I don't know if, as I'm telling you what I told them, I don't know if you created this or if it's just a natural thing, but it's there. Now, my gut was they created it because I watched him defend his wife, and I was like, "Ooh, dude, you're not defending your wife's honor. You're just being defensive." You see the difference? Where it's like, yeah, you see something bad about your wife, you defend your wife's honor and husband. When it's like, I'm having a real problem with my supervisor, this is the real problem. I don't feel like I'm getting stuff on time. Well, what do you think, my wife? And I'm like, oh, dude, you're defending her in a not so good way. Yeah. You're not defending her as your wife. You're defending her as your wife when the problem they're bringing is probably real, and you're not allowing them to bring it to you, so they're done. They're never going to bring stuff to you anymore. Yeah. And so I think that is more of an awareness. I don't think it's a problem to solve. I think it's a tension to manage. You have to know, because you want them to be honest, and you want them to not be mean or disrespectful, but you don't want them to feel like they can't say anything, because that is just going to create artificial harmony.
That's good.
And those are the things that I think that I would be aware of. That last part, I don't think it's a problem you can solve. I think it's a tension you have to be aware of. Yeah. And if you're going to defend, it's just separate defending honor and just being defensive. Yeah. Defensive is not going to work. It's not going to work.
Yeah, defensiveness is never good.
Yeah.
Nope.
In any case.
And in any case, it's not going to work, especially not going to work in a marriage situation. It's just, you're going to shut down the staff. They're not going to be honest with you. Right. Yeah, and then you're going to get this naive feeling like everything's great. And it's like, nah, it's actually not. Everything's not great. Everything's wonderful. People love us. They never say anything. And I'm like, well, yeah, they're saying stuff, just not to you.
Not to you. Yeah, that's exactly right.
So, yeah. But anyway, I hope that helps.
Yeah.
But great question, because I think a lot of people do struggle with that because I think the co-pastoring thing is becoming a little bit more, picking up a little more speed. Yeah. And I think that's great. That's awesome. But you got to pick up the realities of it too. Yes. You can't just, it's like, okay, you're going to create a ton of silos if you do that. Right. You just got to be aware. That's all.
Yep.
Yeah,
that's good.
Yeah. Well, just one last question here.
Yes, sir.
We've talked, both the things we talked about are kind of trends that we're seeing. What are some other trends that you're seeing in the church out there in the last couple of years, and what should we be looking for?
Yeah. It's interesting. One of the things we did talk about when I was with you guys a while back, I would say that I think there's greater focus on that concept that we've talked about, engagement over attendance. I feel like that's sort of a phrase that Church Boom sort of coined. But if you start looking at Sean Lovejoy, or if you look at Newhoff stuff, one way or another, they're saying it. They may not be using the phrase engagement over attendance. Somehow there's been this epiphany, I think more than anything, there's been an epiphany in the church world of why are we setting these attendance goals, and why are we all going, we're going to be 500 by the end of the year, and tell the staff, and the staff says hooray, and then, but what are they actually going to do? What are they actually going to do about it? When you stop and think about it, it's almost humorous. Like, what are they actually going to do about it? Right. Versus giving them something that they can do. I think that's one thing. I think that's been a major shift to realize the focus has to be the activity, not the result. The activity is engagement. The result is attendance. Don't focus on the result. Focus on the activity. That's been a major shift. Second major shift, it seems like, is I think people are beginning to realize the lack of strength they have in their leadership pool, and they're starting to realize that they're not really doing anything about it. It sounds like this. So tell me what you do in your leadership. I'm telling you right now, if I put a pastor on here of a church of 400, I'd say, tell me what you're doing in your leadership. Tell me how you raise up leaders. Well, you know what we do? I mean, we sort of just keep our antennas up, and if we see someone that we just know that they have that, and then we have a conversation with them, and then we put them in leadership. I'm like, okay, that was an answer basically saying we don't do anything. And there's no strategy to it. And I think I've been really watching leaders or pastors and churches begin to realize, man, we've got to do something about this, because I don't know if the pandemic created that, to realize, because I think crisis always speeds up failure. And so maybe it realized, like, man, our leadership is not as strong as I thought. I mean, there's a lot of churches that they got leaders that haven't even come back. Yeah. And it's like, oh, the attenders didn't come back. I'm like, no, your leaders didn't come back. And a lot of pastors have told me, man, I'm really surprised. I said, well, you had a church that their whole faith was connected to Sunday morning, and as soon as that was removed, their faith was removed as well. And you had leaders that were there by title, but not by anything else. Mm-hmm. So people realizing engagement over attendance, but they're also realizing there's a leadership deficit that is happening. And those that are winning, in my opinion, are winning in those areas. Yeah. They're winning in leadership development. That major winning. I mean, I can point you to church after church after church after church, that those that have gone from focusing on result or activity, not results, engagement over attendance, and those that have focused on the leadership development aspect of, like, man, we want to create this depth. It is astounding the amount of growth that they're experiencing. 2,000 to 3,500, 800 to 1,500 in Arizona. I mean, just the list goes on and on and on. We got a guy in Dayton, Ohio, just exploding, just watching it happen, because they're focusing on these areas that they realize that maybe they didn't do all that good in before. We really didn't build really solid teams, really didn't develop leaders. I think that's becoming more and more a reality, that we're really not that good at it. And if we get good at it, it might strengthen who we are. So those are a couple things that, but what do you guys hear? Let me throw it up. Let me flip it over to you. Have you heard anything where it's like, man, I heard this staff member did this, or this church did this? Maybe people are watching and I'm like, oh, that's a good idea. I don't know. Maybe you don't have anything. That's okay. But just thought I'd throw it your way. Like, have you heard anything?
Definitely the engagement over attendance, you know, and I'm not sure that we're necessarily doing the greatest at that, to be honest. And that's stuff that we need to work on with you. But I'm definitely hearing that quite a bit. And I hadn't really thought about that, about the leadership things. I when you said, if you ask somebody, what are you doing to develop leaders, we would have had similar answers. I mean, I think we're giving them opportunities. I think we're being some strategic in some ways, giving them opportunities to develop some of their gifts and getting out of the way and create, like developing a pipeline and places for them to use those gifts and things like that. But I think we're just barely starting to scratch the surface on that.
Right.
So we have grown in that some recently, but there's so much more depth than what we're getting right now. But we do see really good results from that, you know. So I think those two are really important.
Yeah, absolutely. So, well, awesome. I just thought I'd throw that your way, see what happens. But, well, awesome. Anything else you guys wanted to chat about? Anything else you wanted to connect on?
I think we're good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was
All
good.
right. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, awesome. Always great connecting with you guys. Thanks for being on today. You guys are amazing. Sure do appreciate you.
Absolutely.
You.
Talk to you soon.
All right. Man, I love that conversation today with Chad and Amber. It was awesome. Love talking about confidence. Hope you got a lot out of it. I want to remind you to check out Church Boom University at our website, churchboom.org. It's an ongoing development for leaders. You need to be a part of it. Your team needs to be a part of it. You will get so much value out of it. So make sure that you check it out. We'll see you next time.